In this module, I'm going to show you how to implement the dependency injection and inversion of control principle inside our Xamarin Forms MVVM based application. Well, dependency injection and inversion of control is not a new thing. It's a part of object-oriented programming, and I assume that you are already familiar with interfaces, constructor injection, and inversion of control principle. And in this course, we will implement these features inside our Xamarin Forms application. Alright, now let's implement these features inside our application. Well, if you look at the application, then it will be clear that this application is not 100% loosely coupled. Right now, this application is tightly coupled because if we go to the code view model, then you will see these HTTP calls. And we should not put these HTTP calls inside the view model. Now the question is where we will put this code. For this purpose, I'm gonna add a new folder inside my project and name it services. And then inside this services folder, I'm gonna create a new class and name it codes API. And then inside this class, I'm gonna add a new method and name it getCodes. Now inside this method, we will put all the necessary code of HTTP calls. So let's go to the codes view model, and there you will see the following lines of code. Well, let's copy these lines of code and then jump towards the codes API and simply paste inside it. And here we go. Now we need to resolve the namespaces like the HTTP client comes from system.net.http namespace, and this JSON convert.deserialize object comes from the newtonsoft.json namespace. Alright, now you will see the error, and that is await operator can only be used with async method. So let's make this method asynchronous. Well, this method will return this response variable that contains the list of codes. So let's return this response here, and now you will see that it says the return type of this method is void. But here this method will return the list of code. So let's change the return type of this method to list of code. And now you will see another error, and that is the return type of async method must be void or task. Right now you can see that we cannot return void because this method will return the list of code. So let's change the return type of this method to task list of code. And here we go. It will solve all kind of errors. Now let's jump back to the codes view model. And now we need to call this method that we have written inside the codes API class. But before accessing this method, we need to create a new instance of codes API class. And here we go. Now we can access the getCodes method with this object. Alright, this method will return a list of codes. So let's store it in some variable and name it codes. And one last thing is, just change the for each loop according to this codes. And here we go. Right now, we have just put all the API code in some other place for reusability. And now I'm going to run this application. And here we go. Now you can see that we are getting all the codes inside our list view. Now the question is, we have already done this in the previous module. And what's new in this code? Well, if you look at the code, then it's clear that in the previous code, the service class is tightly coupled inside the codes view model. And suppose in near future, if we want to call the API in some other view model, then we need to repeat the whole code. And in order to remove the repetition, we have put all this code in some other file so that we can access this code if we want this in some other view model. But right now our code is still not 100% maintainable. And that's because if you look at the course view model, then it's clear that inside this course view model class, we have created the new instance of course API class. The dependency injection and inversion of control principle says that it should not be a responsibility of one class to instantiate another class. Now the question is how to achieve that kind of functionality. Of course, we are going to use the interface and constructor injection for this purpose. So let's go ahead with the interface. What I'm going to do is I'll simply create a new folder and name it interfaces. And inside this folder, I'm going to add an interface and name it iQuotes. Alright, first of all, let's make the return type of this interface to public. And then I'm going to add a method inside this interface and name it getQuotes with the return type of task list of quote. And here we go. Right now, we have an interface and now we need to implement this interface. Well, if you look at the Quotes API class inside the services folder, then you will see that we have a Quotes API that returns the list of quotes. Well, for a moment, let's assume that we have not created this method. So I'm gonna comment this code. Suppose that right now we don't have anything inside this class and we need to implement the interface. So I'm gonna implement the interface and all the methods associated with this interface, and here we go. Now inside this interface, I'm going to put the same thing that we have put earlier. So let's copy this API code and just paste it here. Alright. Now we don't need this code because this is same code. So let's remove it and here we go. Right now we have just added an iQuote interface and then we have implemented this iQuote interface in the Quotes API class. Now let's jump back to the Quote View Model class. And there you will see that we have created the new instance of this Quote API class. Now we don't need this instance. Rather, we will use the dependency injection. So what I'm gonna do is I'll create the field of type iQuotes. And then let's pass the iQuotes in the constructor. Now I'm gonna assign this parameter to this field of type iQuotes. And here, now we don't need to instantiate the Quotes API class. So let's move this, and in order to call this getQuotes method, let's use the quote field and we can access this getQuote method. Alright. Now what we have done so far is we have created an interface and then we have implemented that interface, and finally we have used the dependency injection inside the Quotes view model. And we call the getQuotes method with this quotes field. Right now you can see that we have passed the iQuote interface inside the constructor. And in this view model you can see that this view model is not responsible to create a new instance of Quotes API object because this will violate the OOP or object oriented principle of single responsibility. However, dependency injection solves this problem. And instead of creating the object here, someone else will do it and pass it to whoever asks for it. Then Quotes view model won't create an instance. It will ask for it and get it through its constructor. Now the question is, who is responsible to create an instance and pass it inside the constructor of this Quotes view model? Well, for this purpose, we will need an IOC container. There are a lot of containers like Unity, Autofake, Ninject, TinyIOC, etc. But the most common and most trusted IOC container is Unity. And this Unity container is mostly used in enterprise level application, and Microsoft team have developed this Unity container. So what I'm gonna do is I'll simply right click on the Solution Explorer and then select Manage NuGet Packages for solution. And after that, let's search for Unity. I'm going to install this Unity container inside my project. So let's install it, And here we go. This container has been installed successfully. Now we can go ahead and we'll use this Unity container. So let's go to the app.xaml.cs file, and there inside the constructor of this app.xaml.cs file, I'm going to use this Unity container. And for this purpose, let's create a new instance of Unity container, and then I'm going to register the dependencies by using register type. And then let's pass the interface, that is iQuotes, and then pass the quotes API. And this register type means that whenever we call this iQuotes, then it will map with the quotes API and will create the quotes API instance. After that, I will add a service locator. Well, we need to configure the app to look for its dependencies from within this container. This is what the service locator does. And for this purpose, let's use the service locator class. And now I'm gonna call this setLocatorProvider method, and within this method, I'll pass my container. So what I'm gonna do is, I'll use the lambda expression, and then let's create a new object of Unity Service Locator, and this Unity Service Locator will take one parameter, and that is our Unity container. So let's pass this Unity container here. Alright, now let me repeat the steps. First, we have created our Unity container, then we have registered our dependencies, and then we have configured our application to look for its dependencies from within this container using service locator. Now let's jump back to the quotes view model, and now we are ready to resolve the dependencies. The app will get an instance of quotes API when it asks for the type of iQuotes in the quotes view model constructor. And you know that in order to bind the view with the view model, we need binding context. And until now, the view was binded to the view model. It creates a new instance of the view model, but it should get it from the container. And now we are going to get the quotes view model from this container. So let's use the service locator .current.get instance, and inside this, if we pass the quotes view model, then you will get this error, and that is quotes view model is a type and it's not valid at this context. So we need to use the type of parameter and then just pass this quotes view model. And this type of is an operator used to obtain a type known as compile time. Alright, now I'm going to run this application, and here you will see the list of quotes. Well, that's awesome. So far, we have created this quotes application with the help of Xamarin Forms MVVM. And we have also used the Unity container for dependency injection. Now, this application looks awesome, but trust me, we will do this application better by using MVVM Prism. Now, in the next section, we are going to create the same application with the help of MVVM Prism. And after that, you can decide that which approach you want to create your Xamarin Forms application. Alright, see you in the next section. In this module, we are going to look at how to get started using MVVM Prism. If you write mobile apps and you are looking for a way to architecture applications cleaner and more flexible, then Prism might be what you are looking for. By the end of this module, you will know what Prism is and some of the benefits you get by using Prism. You are going to know how to download and install Prism, and you are also going to know how Prism works.